In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in black and white emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White, where we discuss the issues, what plague the underserved and marginalized communities, and how we can best help them and inspire them. Before we get going, our guest tonight is going to be Cowann Owens, and I just want to express that the opinions that Mr. Owens expressed tonight are opinions of his own and do not reflect that of the Veterans Administration. Cowann D. Owens is a licensed clinical social worker with 16 years of social work experience, currently providing mental health treatment to veterans at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Cowann began his career as a child protective service worker in 2008 and branched into a clinical role as a therapist in 2013. He has served as a child and family therapist in community mental health settings, a middle school counselor, a private practice therapist, and a clinical and administrative supervisor. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to the show Mr. Cowann Owens. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, greetings. It's a pleasure, a privilege, and an honor to be back here, sir.
Well, it's nice to have you back. Before we get into the show, again, I'd like to say Happy Black History Month to you, but is there anything you'd like to add to your bio before we get going?
Man, I think you really summed up a lot of it. I guess I'll add that I don't know that I mentioned if you said I'm a professional wrestler. And if you did mention that, forgive me. I probably didn't notice it, but that's one thing I do. I'm a Big Zo professional wrestler at OVW, and all over the place. In addition to that, I'm a mentor, child mentor for some teenagers. So that's something I do through Mod Squad. So there's a couple of things I do, and of course, proud husband of 16 years and proud father to a wonderful 12-year-old son and an awesome 14-year-old daughter who is currently stomping very loudly upstairs. So also don't be surprised if you hear my 14-year-old son coming in from archery. I had to choose between being in a safe, quiet, solitude location or having really good Wi-Fi. So I had to choose the Wi-Fi because I didn't want to have any technical issues today. So,
well, I definitely appreciate that. And you know, as we get started, I'd like to just go first into your career as a mental therapist. Can you tell us what inspired you to go into the mental health profession?
So I think it comes back to values. So my top values are my faith, family, helping others or making a difference, health. So when I think about health isn't just about physical health, but also our mental wellness. But if I want to make a difference in the world and help others, I feel like I love talking to people. I love listening to people. I feel like God gave me two of these and one of these, so I should listen twice as much as I talk. So being able to make a career out of listening to people and having them feel seen, that seemed like something that, like, man, people get paid for this. Like, it's still an honor to like the fact that I'm able to make a living talking to people in so many ways. And my main career at this point as a supervisor, so basically supporting other therapists and other psychiatrists and other people on our BHIP team, behavioral health interdisciplinary program. But I just got into the field of social work because I want to help other people and make a difference, because I know that our world is far from perfect, and any little difference that you can do to chip away at kind of the inequities and kind of the issues that are going on in the world seems like a life worth living.
Wow. So, just do you find comfort in the mental health profession, and for what it should provide for those that you actually work with?
Absolutely. I think honestly, in these trying times, the fact that I get to talk to such a diverse and unique population of individuals, that I'm going to talk to people that are Republicans, people that are Democrats, people that are Christians, people that are Jewish, people that are Muslim, people that are atheists, people that have all types of world vantage points, Black people, white people, Asian people, Hispanic people, all types of people across the globe. And in doing that, it's allowed me that opportunity to be able to gain more empathy, to gain more insight and wisdom from other people, because it's a two-way street. It's a mutual relationship. So it's not just that I'm giving, and the client's taking. It's kind of like that reciprocity. So I get to level up from every session that I have from clients. So being able to see that people from such different, unique perspectives from my own, we can still be able to get along, gives me kind of hope for the world in a way. It's like when you talk to people that see the world, it's like, well, you voted different from me, or your religious ideology is different from mine. How can we get along? But when you sit and actually give people the opportunity to be vulnerable and open up, then you actually learn a lot, and that gives me faith in humanity.
So, I think your internet's a little bit unstable because you keep freezing a little bit and then you're coming back. I just
Wow.
wanted to tell you that.
And I'm right next to the router. I hate to hear. I also hear the lightning and thunder going on outside,
Okay,
so
that
I
could
don't
be
know if
it.
that's a factor. So I
That
can't get
could
any
be.
closer to the router than this. I'm touching it.
Yeah, that could be. So, can you tell us, as being into your profession at this point, up to this point, what have you found to be some of the things that have been plaguing the Black community when it comes to mental illness?
Well, I guess thinking specifically about the Black community, it's same for most communities, but I think it's about tribalism. That is what I believe to be the greatest struggle within the world, the ideological tribalism that we have, where people believe that it's like gang warfare, where it's like you either think this way or you think this way, and I have to either be on this side or I have to be on this side. And the
Hmm.
divisiveness within the community, where people like the haves and the have-nots,
Hmm.
the bourgeoisie, those that like, I think, as much as I appreciate and respect W.B. Du Bois, the concept of the talented tenth, it had its place and its purpose. But I think that the idea that only the top 10% of us, the elite, the greatest of the great, it makes it so easy for those of us that might have put ourselves or had the opportunity to get in a different plane, to not look at the rest of our people with the same level of respect and equity that they deserve. Um, and I think that other people feel like it's just challenging, like where they have to sometimes point the fingers and blame other people for their circumstances, and in some cases rightfully so. But I think just the challenges of us fighting, like you ever hear that analogy? If you take a jar and put black ants in it and red ants in it, and if you shake it up, then all of a sudden they'll fight. They're fine until you shake them. Then once you shake them, then they're fighting. I think that there's constant shaking of that jar going on. And I think that's within the Black community and just within the world at large, where people are trying to find what are the differences. Okay, you're wearing Jordans and maybe I like these shoes or whatever it could be, to where we're not necessarily, like, people are so quick to like get gentrified in their neighborhoods or get a little bit of piece of money, move out of the neighborhoods. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but where it's kind of like people don't look at their own people as their people, and try to look at, well, I'm one of the good ones, and that disconnect that we have from our culture. And I think that's
Wow.
problematic, that
Mhm.
bourgeoisie type of, or I should say bougie type of
Mhm.
attitude that people sometimes have. That's problematic to me.
So I mean, like, so in that situation, let me ask the question this way.
Sure.
Do you think that primarily the economic status, which is definitely a problem for the community as a whole, but for some people is worse than others? Are you saying that you think that those that really are at what's considered to be a lower tier of the culture are the ones that suffer more and could have more of a mental illness problem than those at the top?
You know, I didn't say that, but I think it's a fair point. So for sure, there's what we call ACEs, adverse childhood experiences,
Hmm.
and I think that there's certainly a high correlation between one's socioeconomic upbringing, their situation, their circumstance, their propensity to experience and see certain things, whether it's traumas or by virtue of the neighborhoods and the things that people have to do in certain neighborhoods to make ends meet or what they feel they need to. So
Hmm.
sure, I do think that there's something to be said for that. I'll also venture to say that probably the biggest issue in our world in general is class warfare. Like it's like we think that it's just about race and culture and the black versus the white, but if
Hmm.
you really pay attention, it's really become about class and classism and how people are looking at themselves and looking at others, and that
Hmm.
less than type of looking down your nose at people. And I think that's
Hmm.
really problematic, as opposed to looking at other people as being just as human as anybody else, regardless of how many O's you got in your bank account.
Hmm. Can you share a memorable success story from your career in mental therapy?
Sure. Um, there's a story that uh, I try to share this one without getting overly emotional. This is actually before I was a therapist per se, as far as like, I mean, I can give a lot of those stories. I guess let's start off with that one. That's a little bit of a softball. I remember one of the first kiddos that I graduated from therapy. He was in the fifth grade. So I don't know, 10, 11-year-old kid. Uh, a lot of symptoms of ADHD, high activity level, difficulty getting along with his peers. Some of it was the inattention, some of it's just not really paying attention to things and just kind of being silly. And it was difficult for him to forge strong, meaningful relationships. So, as a child and family therapist, like a big part of what I do is like play therapy, and just being able to have that strong, positive relationship with them and being a positive mentor for them in that way, playing, tossing the ball back and forth while we're playing therapy. We call it feelings ball. Um, I'll never forget that after, I say probably about a year or so working together, we have what's called, where I used to work, a graduation tree, where it's this big vinyl sticker that goes on the wall. And then we have these little leaves that we put on it. So when a kiddo graduates, they can write their name and whatever little saying they want to put. And I'll never forget that kid wrote, um, "Thanks, Cowann. Now it's time to go make friends." You know, and to me
Oh,
that
wow.
was really impactful, like knowing that he considered me as a friend in a way. Obviously we have those boundaries and those good relationships, as far as like I can't technically be your friend, but we can definitely have a collegial type of relationship. So knowing that the work that we did together gave him the opportunity to feel comfortable and confident in his own skin to go out and make friends, that meant a
Mhm.
lot to me, because he was somebody that came in with loneliness and a lot of the challenges associated with that. Other story I want to tell you real briefly, and I'll be succinct. There was actually, when I started that job as a therapist, there was a client that I used to work with during my CPS days who was
Mhm.
dealing with a history of addiction. I was her CPS worker, and I was involved in, unfortunately, terminating parental rights with two of her children. She was a young mother, and this woman tracked me down and called me. And it's kind of weird when somebody calls you at your new place of work. That's like, oh, why are they calling me? And she's just like, I just want to tell you thank you, because you are one of the few people that actually believed in me, and you gave me all the opportunities in the world, and you empowered me. And although, I didn't get my kids back, I still have a good relationship with their adopted mother. And now I have another daughter. I've now found Christ. I have a good job. I've been clean and sober. unlike my former partner, you know, I'm still alive and thriving. Her partner ended up passing away. And she's like, you literally saved my life because of the belief that you put in me and helping me to believe in me when I didn't believe in myself and I wasn't ready to make those changes. But so it's like, wow, like when somebody goes out of their way to track you down, to send you that message, kind of knowing that, hey, you were involved in terminating parental rights and like making it so she's no longer the mother of these children. But she was able to put that aside and express humility and gratitude for that. And that just makes the world a difference. Because when you're told you're a baby snatcher and all the other things that you get told as a CPS worker, it's like, man, that was like really kind of gives you what you need to keep going. So.
Mm. Now that's very compelling. With the end of the story, even though you said that she said she didn't get her kids back, I mean, is there a chance that she could possibly get them back now, or is that like permanent adoption?
That's permanent adoption. Yeah, that
Oh,
case was, you know, it's kind of like after a case is open for so many months, you know, we have the first year, and don't get me to quoting things in a field that I haven't worked in for well over a decade, but there's permanency. Like we have the goal of reunification for at least the first year that a child is out of the home. She had more than it probably was close to at least 2 years of having these kids in out-of-home care, and you know, random drug screens, a lot of court visits and opportunities to kind of have supervised visitation, and she just wasn't able to quite get it together to the point of us feeling comfortable in being able to return the kids. So at that point, the kids need some kind of stability, and so the judge made the decision that they would be adopted. I mean, fast forward, I mean, these kids are probably adults by now, which is kind of me showing my age a little bit. So, I mean, she probably, no, she couldn't get them back because they're probably grown. But
mhm.
even if they could, like after, you know, you had a couple years to get them back, at some point you got to give them some permanency and move on. But luckily, she was able to have a good relationship with the adopted parent to where it worked. And she had another child, a daughter, and they were able to kind of have a decent relationship, from what I've heard, at least.
Oh, wow. So, how do you approach building trust and rapport with your clients?
Hmm. I think it starts with me being vulnerable and being open, because I think that people aren't going to want to give more than they're willing to get on the front end. I mean, some people will, and every therapist is a little bit different. So this is just me. I feel a little bit more comfortable in my own skin, and also I'm a larger male, right? So I don't necessarily have the same maybe the same vulnerabilities or same fears that maybe a smaller female might have. And I know I'm speaking in kind of absolutes, and I don't mean to.
Mhm.
But if I tell somebody my personal information, like I'm not going to say, here's my address, here's my direct phone number, that kind of stuff. But, you know, I feel like I can be a little bit more open, a little bit more honest with who I am and comfortable in my skin. Some people have those very, very, very firm boundaries where they're not going to tell you if they're married. They're not going to tell you if they have kids. They're not going to tell you where they, you know, where their hometown is. They're just not going to give you anything. So for me personally, how it works, and no fault or shade or anybody that doesn't take it this way, but I give people a taste of who I am. I say, look, you know, I'm Cowann Owens, and pretty much the intro that you gave, you know, without like tooting my horn or saying, this is my CV, this is my resume, this is all the great things. You know, it's not about that, but it's like, just so you understand who I am and where I come from, you know, I'm gonna give you a little bit of insight, a little bit of background. So by being able to open up and share with people and give your honest feedback about stuff, people don't always necessarily need your unfiltered opinions. Like it's not about me telling you what to do and that kind of stuff. But I
Mhm.
think people just want you to be honest and real with them. So if you're able to be honest and real with people, then they're going to be honest and real back with you, because that's how you kind of establish that trust.
Mhm. So, what are some common challenges you face when working with clients?
Hmm. Well, I guess one challenge for some people, I mean, I've seen it too, is of course people that don't necessarily know what it is they're trying to do. It's like, hey, I know
Mhm.
I probably need help, but I don't really know what that looks like. And they don't really want to, I don't want to say they don't want to do the work, but they might be in the pre-contemplation stage of change, where this like change is hard. And they can come in and process and tell you all their problems, but that doesn't mean that they're ready to do the work to actually change. So sometimes it's really difficult to work with clients when they want to come in and they want to talk, but they're not ready to work, you know, and that's kind of like that faith without works is dead type of thing. Like you can talk all day long, but if you're not willing to start to change some of your behavior, after a while, my job is to hold the mirror up to you and say, hey, you're a wonderfully awesome person. And you're also responsible for some of the circumstances. You might not be responsible for how you got in that circumstance, but you're the only person that can help you to get out of that circumstance. So holding that mirror up and saying, what are you going to do going forward? Yes, I'm sorry that you have that history of trauma. I'm sorry that you were abused. I'm sorry that you're impoverished. I'm sorry that you have this, that you fell victim to addiction. I'm sorry that these things happened to you. And what are you going to do now? So sometimes being able to get people to do the work, to actually graduate too. One of the challenges I face, no fault of the clients that I work with, is just by virtue of where I'm at, we have an access problem. There are way more people that need to come in to get therapy than there are therapists to provide it, which makes the wait times a little bit farther, which then makes it really difficult. Like, in a perfect world, if somebody could get weekly or biweekly therapy, then, you know, after a few months, you might be able to graduate. If you can only get in to see a therapist once, you know, 4 times a year or something like that, then it's going to be hard to really make that traction to do the change work too. So it's kind of like every session feels like a reintroduction sometimes. So that can be difficult too, like figuring out how do you prioritize the people that are ready to do the work versus the people that want to kind of just come and chit chat. There's nothing wrong with chit chat. And sometimes that goes back to your last question of how do you get that trust and that rapport by knowing that people have that safe place to open up. That's a starting point. But at the same time, it's like we can have the cows, the crisis of the week, and we can do the doorknob therapy where you wait to the last minute to tell me the big problem that you should have told me 55 minutes ago. But if we're not willing to actually like look at our treatment plan, what are our goals, what are the problems, what are the objectives, what are the interventions, how are we going to work on those things to actually make the change, then we can't expect change to happen.
Now, you know, just a follow-up question to that, because that's really, really interesting. And I love the way it seems like the way you handle situations like that. But what if you've got a client that's actually stuck? How do you handle that?
You know, so I guess it really depends on what their definition of stuck is. Because, you know, I hate to be flippant with it, but like stuck is different for everybody. So it might be a lot of times people are like, I lack the motivation. And when you're waiting on motivation, motivation is garbage. It's not real. It's fake. Like motivation, you're never going to feel motivated to do the things that you need to do to change. And I'm kind of paraphrasing Mel Robbins here, so I'll cite my source. She talks about activation energy. I think that's a better phrase than motivation. So sometimes helping people to get the activation energy to make the first steps towards change, that can be the thing. We can do what's called metacognition, which is it's a way to trick in the brain into doing things that we don't really feel like doing. So Mel Robbins, again, she talks about the 5-second rule. So counting 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then getting up and starting to take action towards something. So if it's like, I want to go to the gym. The hardest part about going to the gym or working out or exercising is not actually lifting the weights or getting down and doing the push-ups. It's like going to the gym. Like that's the hardest part, not actually the work. Getting on the treadmill is easy, but getting to the gym is the hard part. So saying, all right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm going to the gym. You know, just starting the process is sometimes the hardest step for people. So when they're stuck, being able to encourage that. The other piece is if somebody's truly stuck, then it's like, what is their end goal? Sometimes being able to say, if I had a magic wand and I could wave it over you and things would be ideal, not perfect, but ideal, then what's your goal? Helping them to visualize and vision and start to paint that picture of what their ideal, not perfect, just ideal life would look like, can sometimes give them that momentum to at least, even if that's not going to motivate themselves, it at least gives me that language to then communicate with them. I'm going to speak their language and hold them accountable for the things that it is that they said they want to do. So not a perfect answer, but I think that's the way that we start. And also holding people accountable, being like when you have that trust and that rapport, that relationship goes a very long way. So when people are like, hey, Cowann's going to keep it real with me, then I don't hold back. And sometimes calling them on their crap, it's like when people come in with insurance or by virtue of federal government and somebody else paying the bill, then it can be simple for them to not take it so seriously and just like, oh, I want to keep coming back. This is great. But then when I say, hey, if you were to pay me $150 an hour, would you still be motivated to come in and chit chat with me? And sometimes like that seems kind of icky when you put it in those terms, but it starts to like put your money where your mouth is type of thing. And it's not about the money, but it's like how much skin in the game do you have? How much investment do you have in this process? So sometimes helping people to see that perspective of, am I coming to chit chat like you and because I consider you a friend, or are we actually doing clinical therapeutic work? Like, again, I'm in the healthcare field, not in the friendship field. It's a little bit different.
So how do you stay current with the latest developments in mental health care?
Oh, of course, TikTok. No, no, I do think that there is a place for. I say that in all jokingness, but I do think that I've recently started myself on TikTok as far as trying to spread a message. Cowann Owens, LCSW. On TikTok, just finding opportunities to give little 15-second to 60-minute clips to kind of inspire and motivate other people. So I'm hoping that like using social media in a positive way to be able to give it to other people, like and teaching some people some of the anecdotes and some of the lessons that I'm saying here. And maybe somebody's not going to have an hour and a half or whatever to watch this whole podcast. I hope that they do, but maybe they can find 60 seconds, 15 seconds to watch a little clip and be able to give that. So that's one way that I'm able to provide that source for free of charge, is to give as a way of giving back. I think that I'm also able to find some sources through YouTube, through the journals. The biggest source for me is, again, being a member of a behavioral health interdisciplinary program. That means that although I'm the supervisor, I'm the boss, right? I don't ever consider myself to be the smartest person in the room, because when I feel that that's the case, then I'm in the wrong room. So surrounding yourself with other people with other experiences, other expertises. So learning from the psychiatrists, what's the best and latest, greatest medication, the nurse practitioners who are on the field, the RNs who really know how to get their hands dirty and do the hard work, fellow psychologists, fellow social workers and psychologists and licensed marriage family therapists, being able to, again, yes, having fellowship, whether it's in person or via social media, but also, just kind of keeping abreast of any of the articles. So I'm currently in school, getting my DSW, Doctorate in Social Work. So I come across a lot of articles by virtue of working toward my capstone dissertation type of project. So I stay abreast in that kind of way. But a lot of it is just, I like to stay on podcasts, not much different from this one, to learn from people. And YouTube, or the YouTube University, you can get a lot of really good stuff off that. It's not just entertainment. Of course, you have to kind of cite your source and kind of figure out who is it that I'm learning from. You can't just listen to any Yahoo, but if it's like a legitimate source, you can get a lot from that. Just driving to and from work and listening to YouTube or a TED Talk and that kind of stuff can be beneficial.
Can you describe a particularly challenging case you've worked and how you handled it?
Well, I guess a particularly challenging case, one that comes to mind is just somebody that, and I guess really this isn't even one specific one. I can think of a couple of times, not very many times, but people that become highly emotionally dysregulated, people that express on the verge of homicidal ideation, but maybe no specific plan or threat, like I'm going to go kill X, Y, and Z. Because in those cases, I have a duty to warn. I gotta be like, hey, Bob, your neighbor wants to come kill you. I got, that's where my limits for confidentiality stop, kind of thing. Right. I got to tell the cops. Right. So I don't, not that kind of a situation, but when somebody is so full of so much venom and they're just like really, really angry and they're seeing red and they're having difficulty like bringing it down to like hear where you're coming from. then sometimes those, like, it feels like no matter how many years in the field you have, how many years of practice you have, you're kind of starting to second guess yourself. Like, am I qualified to do this? Am I able to help this person? Like, they are in a whole nother level right now. So then that makes you feel a little bit powerless, a little bit helpless, and that can be really challenging. But then, of course, remembering that there's no such thing as a good emotion or a bad emotion. Emotions are just information. So when you start to break it down, like, okay, so what is the goal in this particular emotion that they're expressing? Because there's a means to an end. So if they're expressing this much rage, this much anger, then a lot of times people think that, oh my gosh, they're so angry, but that's like the tip of the iceberg, and really the iceberg's so vast underneath it. It's probably that they're feeling helpless. It's probably that they're feeling vulnerable. It's probably that they feel like they're not getting their needs met. They don't feel like they're being listened to. They have some shame. There's some other underlying stuff other than just that anger that they're expressing. So sometimes being able to be mindful of that, to be able to empathize with, oh, okay, this person's a wounded animal right now. Like, they're in defense mode. This don't have nothing to do with me. I'm not going to take this personal. They're not yelling at Cowann because of anything specific to Cowann or my personhood or my values. This is about them and their challenges and their emotions of helplessness. So when I can kind of get myself emotionally regulated, take a deep breath, sometimes go back, process it with my team, other colleagues in the field, and kind of say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. What are some suggestions and some insight you guys might offer? Then kind of coming back and saying, all right, so we had a really challenging session last time, assuming they're willing to come back. If they're not willing to come back, it might be like, hey, do we want to look at making a referral to get you with somebody that might be a better fit? I think we talked about better flavors of ice cream last time. So I might not be your Rocky Road if that's your favorite flavor. I might be mint chocolate chip. And the most important aspect of therapy is your relationship with your therapist. So I need to make sure that goodness of fit is there. So what can I do to get you into a place where you're going to be most productive? Because everybody deserves the opportunity to have a life worth living. So giving them those opportunities to just kind of say, okay, this is what I need, and how am I going to get my needs met? So
would you know, in said situation with people that are like, you know, irrational, over the top a lot, what part does chemical imbalance play in that?
a big part. I mean, so sometimes I feel like when it comes to mental health, there's two sides of the coin. There's, of course, talk therapy, traditional therapy, what I do. And then there's, of course, psychiatry as far as the medication piece. So sometimes I can do the best talking all day long. And for some people, that's going to scratch the itch. That's going to be just what they need. For some people with certain diagnoses, certain levels of severity, they might need, like when we talk about chemical imbalances, how do you balance chemicals? And well, usually with other chemicals, right? That's like go to the lab, go to the chemist, and kind of balance it. So sometimes it doesn't matter how great the words that are coming out of my mouth are. If their brain's not in a place to where their ears are going to receive it, it's like talking to this wall behind me. So being able to make that referral to get them to a place where they can consider the possibility of medication. Not everybody's going to be open to that, but at least having a conversation with somebody that can potentially prescribe some. The other piece is when we talk about chemical imbalances, it could also be substance induced on the flip side, where they're ingesting chemicals they don't have no business ingesting, that's also resulting in that kind of situation. So it could be substance use, it could be alcohol use, it could be something else going on that's not just the natural flow of chemicals, the serotonin, the norepinephrine, the dopamine, all those kind of things, sometimes the good hormones that could be in there. The wires might get a little bit crossed. So being able to refer them to people that can help out in that, or at least a second set of eyes and ears to kind of see if there's anything that maybe I'm missing or some additional supports that might be able to be provided.
So tell us, what does your doctorate in social work, what does that mean to you?
To me, where do I take that? Let me tell you what it doesn't mean to me. That might be a better way to start. When I get my DSW, I'm not going to get a pay raise. I'm not going to specifically get a promotion from this. I'm not going to be able to prescribe medications from this. I'm not going to have a different job trajectory. Like, I'm already a therapist. So it's not like when somebody says, I want to go become a psychologist, I want to get my PsyD or my PhD because I want to become a psychologist, right? I've been a licensed clinical social worker for like a decade already. Like, so I don't require it for that. I don't require that to be a supervisor because I'm already there. What I believe my DSW is going to provide me is what's going to provide my clients is the opportunity to give me what I hope to be a seat at the table, an opportunity to amplify the voice of who I consider to be in some regards the voiceless. So people that maybe I can advocate for, maybe some opportunities that I would not have been able to happen, or like people might not have respected, oh, LCSW, you're just another social worker. Because a lot of times LCSWs, we're like the worker bees, right? We're the ones that are doing a lot of the heavy lifting in these agencies, mental health places. But then you have the doctors, the psychologists, the psychiatrists, the whatever professions that are sometimes running the facilities. So to me, a DSW gives me that opportunity to be able to advocate a little bit more strongly. It's going to amplify my voice, I believe. So all the clients that have put all of their trust in me and all their faith in me, it's going to give me the opportunity to sit at those tables and say, look, here's some inequity. Here's some opportunities for growth. Here's some places that we can make a difference. So it's the process, the last 3 years, the process of going to school has illuminated. It's been more of an unteaching, an unlearning, of figuring out how much I actually don't know and how much there is to continue to gain, and that intrinsic motivation to continue to learn beyond just the letters behind your name and in front of your name. So when you have a name like Cowann and people like to call you Cowann, or mispronounce your name, then it's like, well, Dr. Owens is so much easier to say. So in just, I say, oh, it'd be cool to be Dr. Owens. But it's not about that, right? Like, it's not about the power, like all the differential. If anything, it's about being able to, how can I make a difference to the world? Because actually the decision to get my doctorate was while I was listening to a book on tape. It was Tarana Burke and Brene Brown, You Are Your Best Thing. It's an anthology of a bunch of Black voices, individuals that have all these stories, and it's a wonderful, wonderful book. But hearing like the foreword or preface, whichever it is in the book, and hearing them talk about all of the changes that need to be happening, and this is probably toward the tail end of the pandemic or maybe in the crux of it, and I realized, man, there's so much work that has to be done, and I think that that's what I signed up for. So having that DSW will hopefully give me the opportunity, give me the keys to be able to help make some of that change. So that's what I'm hoping for.
So what role does self-care play in your work as mental therapist?
Well, I think everything. If I'm not in a position to, you can't, it's really difficult for you to be a hypocrite, right? If I'm telling other people, hey, make sure you're getting enough sleep, make sure you're eating good, make sure you're exercising, make sure you're communicating with people in such a way, make sure that you're doing the things that you love. And then I'm just completely, sometimes they say the doctor is the worst patient or whatever. Like, if I'm not taking my own advice, then I'm not going to be able to be a vessel or a tool or a resource for other people to benefit from. So I think that me being able to do the things that recharge my battery, it's the only way forward. It's the only way that I'm going to be able to pay it forward to other people. So for instance, I mentioned to you that I'm a professional wrestler. That's an outlet for me, that going to pick other grown men up and slamming on them out is like, that's an outlet for me, right? So being able to have that opportunity and that avenue to do the thing that I love. And ironically, I'm a professional wrestler for the same reason that I'm a therapist, and I'm in the field of social work, is to elicit emotions from people. So whether it's me being the good guy and dancing and doing silly things and entertaining people, I'm allowing them for the couple of hours that come to my show to suspend disbelief, to be involved and immersed in something that's so different and something that's so unique from their 9 to 5 they were stuck in, or the situations that might be stressing them out, to just have that release. So I'm able to get that release from that process of being an entertainer. And I'm able to also allow people that safe haven, that safe place to be able to come and let their hair down and just be able to, I guess, control something they don't necessarily get to control. Like if you go to the movies or you go to a football game, like the movie is going to be the movie, whether you watch it on tape or you yell at the movie screen. If you're watching another sport like football or basketball, they're going to be playing as good as they can play. It's not going to make much of a difference. You come to watch me wrestle, and if I pick the guy up and I slam him, and then you're like, slam him again, Big Zo. And I might be like, all right, this one's for you. Third row, watch this. Ooh, boom. You know, if I'm a bad guy and somebody's like, boo, you suck, I might look back, you suck. And this is what I'm going to do to your good guy. Bow. And like, so it's like that call and response type of thing. Like when I'm a good guy, I come out and say, what time is it? Everybody yells, Zo time. What time is it? Zo time. And that allows them that opportunity to be a part of the show, and to be a part of something that's bigger than them. For me to be able to, for those moments, for that 5 to 10 minutes that I'm in that elevated, in that ring, to be something bigger than myself. You know, Big Zo is a superhero or a supervillain sometimes. Cowann, you know, I'm a nice guy and I help people and I make a positive difference in the world, but it's just kind of something different. So I think that if you're not doing things that you love, that inspire you, that motivate you, that give you a purpose, then it's difficult for you to encourage or model for other people that that's what they should be doing. So live a life worth living.
So as you're doing this interview now and you're looking into the camera, what is it that our people, that our audience, especially those that are in your area, what are they going to get from Cowann when they come to you for therapy?
So when you come to Cowann for therapy, you're going to get the most genuine version of myself that I can give you, right? I don't believe in pulling punches. So if you're somebody who, I don't know, I don't want to finish that sentence in the wrong way because I think it could come off as callous or cavalier. So some people, I meet people where they are, I guess is probably a better way of putting it. Sometimes people are going to want somebody that's going to just give it to them straight, no filter. And I'm able to give that to people. If somebody needs somebody that's going to be a little bit more compassionate or a little bit more patient, I can give that to them. So some of it is by virtue of having, 4 decades of being a brown person and learning the art of code switching. I'm able to learn how to appropriately meet people's needs, meet people where they are. So it's not that I'm ever fake, but I'm always trying to be mindful of how can I be the realest version of myself, but also provide this person with the customized care that they're going to benefit most. How am I going to give you the opportunity to be as vulnerable and honest as you can be to get the most from your treatment and your care? So that's what I give people. Typically 99 times out of 100, if I meet somebody for therapy, we're going to explore your values within the first 3 sessions. You're going to leave with a list of what are my top 2 to 5 or 7 or whatever values, so that you have that North Star, you have that Polaris, you know what's going to be the thing that's going to guide your life. That allows me to have the language to communicate with people in, because if I know your values, I know what's most important to you, then I know how to motivate you. So motivational interviewing is my go-to as far as interventions go. So helping people to have that mirror held up to them to see what are your strengths, what makes you uniquely wonderful and beautiful, what makes you different from other people, and how can I continue to help you to reach those goals. We're going to come up with comprehensive treatment goals as far as, what is the greatest change that you want to make during your time together in therapy. I'm going to be very clear and kind and concise in doing that process, so that there's no question about what are we working on. And if we start straying too far from that, then I'll kind of remind you like, hey, we said that our top treatment goal was this. Do we need to update our treatment plan, or are we working on the wrong thing? Because I need to kind of hold you accountable in that kind of way, in a firm, clear, loving kind of way.
Mhm.
So I think that's a big part of it, just being able to help people to understand their values, help people to feel comfortable and being vulnerable. So get comfortable with the uncomfortable. So.
So, how do you help clients develop coping strategies for their mental health issues?
So a lot of it, again, it goes back to kind of the values. So if I know that your top values are family, having enough money, and faith, then okay. So let's talk about who do you consider to be in your family? What does family mean? Why is that so important to you? Uh, and then so maybe if family is a top value, then maybe a coping strategy might be okay. So I know how important family is to you. So maybe for you, having a picture of your family nearby might be something that keeps you motivated in tough times. Maybe being able to have those opportunities to talk to certain family members on a regular basis, or write letters, or journal, or have those things. Like by knowing your values, it kind of helps me to kind of tailor them to your needs. So if your relationship with your partner is the most important part for you, then okay, how can I help to support that? Maybe we need to invite your partner to come into a session too, so that we can involve them in the process. If having enough money is a top value for you, then how can we help you in reaching that goal? Is the issue that a coping strategy is budgeting? Do we need to look at limiting our spending? Do we need to look at finding side hustles so that you can find ways to leverage your talents and the things that you enjoy to make additional sources of income? So a lot of it is, if faith is your values, then how are you living into your faith? Is it that we need to find a church home, or maybe attend more regularly, or maybe prayer or something, reading the Bible? What are some things that really resonate with you? So when I come up with people's coping strategies, number one, I don't come up with them. I empower them to come up with them based off of, you've told me your values. So here's this big menu of services. Here's maybe some suggestions I might offer and pull out of them. But it's usually like based off of the values, because that's a big part of motivational interviewing, which, as I mentioned, is my bread and butter.
Mhm. So, what advice would you give to someone considering a career in mental therapy?
I think it's kind of like, well, broken record here, but what are your values? Like, if your value is getting rich and famous, I mean, could it happen? Maybe you could become like, I hate to even say Dr. Phil at this point, but I mean, there's not too many avenues where a therapist is going to be rich and famous. You can certainly become comfortable. You can certainly like go viral if you get the right video or something like that. But I think it's like, is one of your values helping others? Is it making a difference? Is it health? Because if you're not people focused, people oriented, and it doesn't have to mean that you're super gregarious and you're outgoing, you just love to talk and you're a ham, because there's different flavors of ice cream. Sometimes people might like somebody like myself that has a little bit more over top energy. Some people might like somebody it's a little bit more meek and a little bit more toned down, and that's okay. A little more buttoned up, a little bit more on the professional side, which I can certainly be professional too. But I think kind of understanding what is your end goal. Is it just because you like helping people? Is it just because you like talking? Because if those don't resonate with you, then it's probably not going to make a big difference. Like, because you're just going to be super frustrated. I'll also say that a big part too is knowing your limits and knowing your needs, because therapists need therapy too. I've gone and I've gotten help when needed in situations. And I think when other people feel as though um, I can sit in this seat, but I can't sit in that seat, I'm too good for that. When you feel like you can't reverse roles, you can't be humble enough to accept help, then who the hell are you to give help? Like, that's a
Wow.
very, very hypocritical thing. Like, right. Like,
Mhm.
that's it's like jumping a car, right? Maybe my car is running this time, so I can pull the jumper cables up and I'm gonna, jump start your car. But there might come a time when that reciprocity is needed. Maybe not the same car jumping, but it might be that at some point I'm gonna need some help from somewhere else. And if
Right.
I can't recognize when my bucket is empty and put my own ego aside, then how can you're not looking at your clients with the type of respect and reverence that they deserve, because such a humble, thing for them to have the humility to come to you and entrust you with their life, quite literally. In some places, people are suicidal. And people are expecting you to be able to help to get them on a proper path. If you're wasting their time because you don't really, again, you don't have the bandwidth to do what you need to do to take care of yourself. And also going back to what you'd asked a few questions ago, do you have a growth mindset? Are you willing to continue with your CEUs? Are you willing to continue to learn the greatest trends and the topics that are going to resonate in modern culture that are going to be most helpful and most beneficial to people? So I think that that's important to people know that this isn't just like a quick, easy paycheck. This is difficult, especially the charting. Honestly, I can sit down and talk to people and listen to their stories, but then at some point, I got to write it up. I got to be able to write it in a professional, succinct kind of way, but also detailed enough for an insurance company or a joint commission to be able to look at this and say, okay, they actually did therapy. They weren't just chit-chatting and BSing. There was some work that happened here, and how can we justify continuing to pay for this person to come to get this service? So being honest with yourself and being honest about what it is you're trying to do and accomplish.
So how do you handle the emotional toll of working with clients in distress?
So a lot of it is, again, having your own community. So I'm blessed to be a part of a BHIP team where we have other people that are in a similar line of work, that, we process cases, and sometimes being able to get the validation that, hey, you did the right thing, or here's some other opportunities for growth, here's some other resources or points of consideration, but also leaning on my own coping skills. So if it's going home and spending time with my family or doing things I enjoy, eating foods that bring me happiness, it could be exercising, getting on the treadmill, or lifting something heavy or whatever. What are some things that help me to process? Sometimes journaling is something that can be done. I don't journal on a regular basis. When I do, I love to do a gratitude journal. And that's where I think about what are 3 to 5 things that were good about the day. So as opposed to like writing 5 pages worth of all the crappy stuff that happened throughout the day, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's processing that has its place too. Just taking a few seconds to just say, okay, so today I had a delicious turkey sandwich. Today I had a great conversation with my wife. Today I was able to spend time playing video games with my kids. I was on a great podcast, and I had some really good therapy sessions, just spitballing some things. All those things didn't happen today. But if those were some things that maybe I would put in a gratitude journal, like it doesn't have to be earth shattering. I solved world hunger and I cured cancer and I've made all the difference in the world. It might be just the little tiny things that are like, okay, this is going to keep me going for tomorrow. And then when I backtrack and I look at my gratitude journal for the last week or the last month or the last year, when I'm having a really crappy day, I can be reminded that, man, you had a lot of really good moments too. It might not have been perfect, but you still got a reason to keep going, because look at all these little things and these accolades and these accomplishments that have been beneficial for your life. So keep it moving.
So let's transition to your work as a school counselor.
Okay.
So tell us what motivated you to become a school counselor. What was happening at that time, in that moment, when you wanted to do that?
So it was a really unique and interesting opportunity. So it was actually a colleague of mine, a fellow therapist at the place that I was working at the time, Community Mental Health Agency. Her husband was a science teacher at that place, and she kind of told me about it. I never heard of the school, but that particular place was a private nonprofit school. It was also a boarding school. So there was an opportunity to not only be a middle school counselor, but also to be a dorm parent. And the idea of kind of immersing yourself in that kind of a situation didn't seem like there was going to be too many opportunities in life to at least give it a try. Whether or not something you do for the rest of your life, that's neither here nor there. But it just seems like something that, like, I really love kids, and I love, I always wanted to do something in the school system. And it just kind of seemed like a really unique Like I've been a therapist for a while at that point, not a super long time. I guess at that point I had maybe 5 years or so, maybe a little bit more therapy experience. So I was like, if I were to actually move into a school and make the difference with these young people, then what kind of a feedback would that do? How can I invest in the world? I found that working with kids in general, and I think we talked about this a little bit last time with mentorship, it's so much easier to help people in their life to start them on a good path rather than trying to retrain old habits or trying to. I don't believe in broken people, but if
Mhm.
you think about an adult that's gone through a lot of crap, there's a whole lot of trauma and a whole lot of unpacking and a whole lot more work to do on the back end to fix a situation, a lifetime of trauma and a lifetime of pain and suffering, versus trying to be that role model and that inspiration for a young man or a young person on the front end. So it seemed like a really cool opportunity to just immerse yourself in your work and to do something different at that time.
So, so as a school counselor, are there any success stories that you can share with us that you've had with some of your students?
Yeah, I mean, I was in that work for a couple of years
Mhm.
before the contract was not renewed, unfortunately. And that was a really devastating story, because we were all in that situation as far as literally sold our house, moved into this place, and our contract was not renewed, right?
Mhm.
So I wasn't there long enough to really see the long term impact that I would have liked to in that particular place. But I think the seeds were planted to where now, fast forward, I don't know, like 8 years or so, I'm seeing these kids now graduating from high school and graduating from college and starting families and having all of these positive experiences. Some kids actually that are going into the mental health field, some people that are actually working in the school system now. So being able to see some of those kids that had a lot of challenges that are now kind of giving back and reaching out and like just, hey, I remember when you said such and such, and I'm so happy for you. I'm happy that you are a part of my life, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So there was one young man in particular, and I won't go into the specific details, but unfortunately, he was in a situation where his brother unintentionally passed away by firearm violence.
Mhm.
And being able to work with him directly through some of that guilt, some of that shame, some of those circumstances was very inspiring. Like knowing that there was so many challenges, so much trauma with that, and having
Mhm.
like I don't know that you can really work with somebody on the same level. Like just hey, I'll see you once every couple of weeks. Versus quite literally, if you're having some issues, knock on my door in the middle of the night because I'm having a nightmare kind of situation.
Mhm.
So that was a very unique situation where boundaries weren't nearly as tight as they are in my other roles because they're quite literally your neighbors, you're their dorm parents. So you're working with their parents to help to raise these kids 5 days, 6 days a week, really, to support them. So there were several situations like that where you're, finding people and helping to support them even past their your time in their employment. Just continue to reach out to them. So.
Wow. Um, how do you address the unique needs of students from diverse backgrounds?
So I guess it goes back to just kind of figuring out how do they see themselves. So
Mhm.
although cultural diversity is super important, I'm never going to become, and cultural competency might be a better phrase. I'm never going to be culturally competent in all avenues of cultures, right? And culture is
Mhm.
such a vast word, right? And diversity is such a big topic that right now,
Mhm.
quite frankly, our government doesn't want to talk too much about diversity, equity, or inclusion. That's neither here nor there, though. But I think being able to let people be the facilitators of their story, for me to yes, I might be the professional, but you're the expert of your life. So I'm going to sit under your learning tree and allow you the opportunity to teach me about your experiences, about your home